Final question to wrap up the podcast. We covered pretty much every country or most of the big players in the region. There is one player in the region which we haven't discussed in much detail, so let's finish up with them. And that's Iran. Closely linked to Syria. Hezbollah severely weakened in Lebanon. We know that the Palestinian Islamic Jihad leaders were arrested in Syria as we speak. Some are saying that this is the end of the axis of resistance. A war with Iran is looming. We've got a split within the Trump administration against those who want to go with war with Iran and those who don't. What have been your thoughts about Iran on those three fronts? The nuclear front, and a war looming with Israel via America. Number two, the end of what some used to say was that crescent, the Persian crescent, the Iranian crescent of influence and support. And has the axis of resistance come to an end? Let's wrap up on that.
I think the axis of resistance against the Sunni world has been broken. The reason why I give it its full title is because I don't think it was an axis of resistance against the Israelis by any stretch. You compare the death toll of Muslims that were killed by the axis of resistance versus the Israelis, there's no comparison whatsoever. I think that Ahmed al-Sharaa was able to take Syria because there is an Arabic phrase or dua that's often made, Allahumma dharb al-zalim bil-zalim wa khruj min baynihima salmin. Allahumma hit the tyrant with the tyrant and let us come out from between them safe and sound. Ahmed al-Sharaa is the one who came out from between them. Iran and the Israelis, two tyrants, went at each other. The Israelis decimated Hezbollah's capabilities, who were the spine of the Assad regime. The Assad regime could not survive on Syrian power. It survived on the Iranian proxies. When Israel smashed those Iranian proxies, an indirect effect was that Assad suddenly became so weakened militarily that Ahmed al-Sharaa could take place. This distinction is important. It doesn't mean the Israelis delivered Ahmed al-Sharaa. It means the Israelis unintentionally created a scenario that Ahmed al-Sharaa was able to come out from between them and take over Damascus.
They don't even deny that. If you speak to Ahmed al-Sharaa, his administration goes, the timing was everything.
Because you met them and I know you spent some time.
Hezbollah weakened, Iran weakened. This was the perfect opportunity.
Which allowed it to go through. Yeah. I think it's also rattled the Houthis. So now that Trump has escalated against the Houthis, at the request of Saudis, at the request of the UAE, at the request of some ordinary Yemenis as well, as opposed to the request of the Israelis, there is a movement now on the part of the internationally recognized government in Yemen to begin a new offensive against the Houthis, to take Hodeidah and maybe finally take the capital back from the Houthis. In 2018, when the Yemeni forces tried to take Hodeidah, it was the Democrats that came in. It was the American regime that came in to protect Hodeidah. And previously, when they tried to take Hodeidah, the Democrats also came and protected the Houthis and ensured and threatened the Yemeni army by preventing them from taking Hodeidah. They believe now that the Americans will no longer support the Houthis, because the reason they support the Houthis before was that we want to deal with Iran. Part of that is recognizing Houthis. We don't want the Houthis to jeopardize with Iran, so don't attack them. Now that Iran is under pressure, the Yemenis believe they can finally take Yemen back from the Houthis. The Houthis, of course, did a coup in 2014. They fought 7 wars because they believe only Ahl al-Bayt are allowed to rule Yemen. And so many Yemenis want to see the Houthis ousted. It was interesting as I went across different places. I would always have a Yemeni at the end of the talk who'd ask me a question and say, Sami, how do I reconcile the Ummah celebrating the butchers of my family? And they would say the same thing about Hezbollah. Sami, Syrians would say, Sami, how do I reconcile the Ummah celebrating the butchers of my family? How do I reconcile the Ummah celebrating the rockets that they're firing on Israel when these are the people who surrounded my family in Yarmouk and surrounded and shot and shouted Ya Hussein and Ya Fatima and stuff, and were taking revenge for what happened to al-Hussein? Am I the one who is wrong by not supporting what's happening and taking place? As a result of Iran being weakened by the Israelis and by the Americans, Trump is trying to bully them into a preferable deal. Israel want war, Trump doesn't want war. What Trump wants is a maximum pressure to get a deal by which Iran dismantles its nuclear technology, and then they can go to America and say, I solved what Obama and Biden couldn't solve. The issue is, however, that although Iran is weakened, it still has the capability to frustrate the region. What I mean is this. The Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent his brother, the defense minister,
a couple of days ago,
Khalid bin Salman, to Iran.
And a statement was issued basically saying they wouldn't support an attack or a war in Iran.
The reason being is there is a fear in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's policy with Iran is always based on the appetite in America for war. If there is an appetite for war in America, then the Saudis tend to try to make peace with the Iranians. If there's an appetite for peace with the Iranians, then the Saudis always amplify to try to push for more harder stance. Why? Because the Saudis believe that if there is peace between America and Iran,
It's bad for them.
Iran will get the proxies and surround Saudi Arabia. And you know, the Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, one of the pro-Iran militias in Iraq, famously said once to Iranian students, when they said, "Yeah, Mujahid, one day you'll be in Aqsa." He goes, "Riyadh first, Riyadh. Saudi is our priority, like we're going after." The Saudis believe in peace, the Americans might recognize Iranian proxies, and then Saudis will have to deal with this encroachment. But when there's war, the Saudis want to say, we want the Americans to fight, not us. Because we're worried that when the Americans go to war with the Iranians, we are the ones who are going to be hit. Houthis are going to fire rockets at us. They're going to hit our oil facilities. And the American public no longer supports war, so they won't allow the Americans to protect us in Saudi. And if they won't protect us in Saudi, we can't rely on, the army of Kebsa and Mendi to, protect our oil facilities. We're not used to war as Saudis. We're used to outsourcing. So we need the Americans to protect us. If the Americans won't protect us, we need to go and plead with the Iranians and tell them, Wallahi, if the Americans hit you, it won't be through us. Like, we all have nothing to do with it. Which is why the Houthis always threaten to fire missiles. I think that Iran wants to now negotiate with the Americans. I think initially they were in rage over Syria. I think now that the Israelis and the Iranians are aligned on Syria, they want to see Ahmed al-Sharaa collapse.
Indeed.
I think that Iran is threatening from this side and Israel is threatening from the other side, which is a very ironic, coming together of. I think that the Iranians are now revising the way they develop the Axis. Many of their politicians are coming out and saying, we no longer support Hezbollah, we no longer support...
We made mistakes.
Yep. The Lebanese government that the Americans and the Israelis and the Saudis and the UAE, they helped to broker. The Lebanese government now is seeking to disarm Hezbollah, which they might succeed in doing so this time. They may succeed. I think that the Iranians are trying to find a 5-6 year peace. They want to preserve the Houthis in Yemen and protect their allies in Iraq, to say at least this would be a stepping stone for us to try and access against the Sunni world again, in another period of time. Let's wait 5-6 years and make the peace. Bin Salman is raving and doing concerts in Saudi Arabia. He's not likely to be strong anytime soon. His economic projects are not doing very well. Trump wants a deal. Let's make a deal with Donald Trump. And I think in this regard, the Iranians are now licking their wounds. And I think the space that the weakening of Iran has allowed is a space that allows Turkey to really expand. And how Erdogan fashions that Turkish expansion will decide how the region looks like for the next generation. If Erdogan expands under the Turkish flag, then it may well be that it will cause new problems for the region. If he expands under the Muslim flag, I think Erdogan will leave Turkey in a position to be the most formidable unifying power in the Ummah. The problem Erdogan has with that is that while everybody is focused on the Iranians, he has not successfully pacified Kemalists or been able to fully assert himself in Turkey in a way where he can guarantee the success of his successor. And I think that's where there are much more question marks now than there were before. But I will say at the end of this analysis is, before Iran had a chokehold on Syria, on Lebanon, on Iraq and Yemen. With the weakening of Iran, there are possibilities that have now opened. It may not necessarily get better. It could get worse. But people will always tell you that the status quo was unsustainable as it was before, and therefore it is better to see what other status quo can emerge. And this is why I link this back to Gaza.